Live from
Whereabouts did you go? Where was it?
Most of our time was in Gary. We did Clonmani, which is
What happened?
where Malin Head
Missing
is.
pen?
That's from Chew in Gary, so
She was right there.
it's actually a village outside of Chew in Barnaby.
I did have something I wanted to write down.
That's primarily because we flew in, did
Yeah. Hold on,
the
everybody.
Cliffs of Moher,
Yep.
stayed 2 nights at a castle, and then did the rest of the last 12 days just staying at B&B's on the fly.
Southern Emerald Ring.
Is that what you've done? I've never been to
No,
the
that's what
Southern-
that area's called. I started in Shannon and went to Dublin
I've not ever done
by
that.
bicycle.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Cool.
when I was far younger and in way better shape.
Very
Supposed
nice.
to more round. Wow, that was blast.
All right, here we go. 5 o'clock.
I guess we're
Welcome to
still
the
running.
Peterborough Select Board meeting for December 19th. Hey, our last meeting of the year.
Yes, it is.
I'm Tyler Ward. We have Bill Kennedy and Bill Taylor, fellow Select Board members. Nicole McStay, our Town Administrator, and Ally Kreutz, Assistant to the Town Administrator, is at the table. Tonight's agenda. Oh, we are on air, so what would you say at the end of the year here? We'll have a couple public hearings to accept money. That's always a great thing, right? Is this one a public hearing, the new
No.
ad? That's
No,
okay.
that'll just be other business.
All right. And then Peter Leishman, our representative, might make it out in time before we finish our meeting. We had, I see a bunch of people that worked on updating the handbook, employee handbook. And then we'll discuss a little bit about the assessing update. And then there's another exciting
Yes,
mention.
yes, we got a.
Wait.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, not that.
not this?
No.
Oh, the other one,
The
yes.
other one.
Yes. Okay.
Ooh.
Really shaping up to be exciting.
A great way to end the year.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so our first, should I just jump right in?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll make a motion to enter a public hearing due to RSA 31:95-B for the acceptance of unanticipated monies.
Second that.
All those in favor? Right.
Aye.
Aye, great. So we're getting some cash for our bridge project and
Yes.
other stuff.
Yes, so this is in addition to the money that we receive from the state for our road maintenance. We will also be receiving $65,789.59 to go towards any kind of bridge work, which we have plenty of to do. And $53,433.82 to go towards roadway maintenance, construction, and reconstruction, which we also have plenty of to do. So our thoughts, Lily and I's thoughts on this is that we'll use the $65,000 to offset the capital reserve contribution that we'll be making at town meeting this year. And we'll use the $53,000 to offset some of the roadway improvement, that $400,000 we also vote on at Maytown meeting every year. So these will, until then, these will sit in the fund balance, and then we'll write the warrant articles in such a way that it will raise and appropriate that money out of the fund balance and offset the cost.
Well, what happens if the off chance those warrant articles don't get voted on?
Then that money will still be sitting in the fund balance. Yeah. But they will need to go be used specifically for those purposes. We wouldn't be able to use them to reduce the tax rate, for instance.
So when I was reading the description of these contributions, there was $10 million to be spread out across the state. Where did that $10 million come from, do you know? Is
I
that state money or federal?
think that was, do you know what the origin of that? Was that
Well,
was that one of the ARPAs, or is that one of the last, or is it just I thought it was one of the COVID money, whether it was ARPA or the Infrastructure Act. But it was money that the state got through federal grants.
So we're not sure where.
I'd have to go back and look through the legislative updates to find it.
Oh,
I don't
that's right.
remember exactly which,
Yeah, I wasn't gonna wade into that.
yeah,
Anyway, don't worry about it.
okay.
$10 million.
Yeah,
Here you go.
Anybody in the audience? By the way, Lily Gilligan is our finance
Yes.
director. And you know,
maybe Peter Leishman will remember.
Oh, that's
exactly
nice.
where those monies came from.
HB2?
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions or reasons why we shouldn't accept this money?
Hearing none?
Okay, with that, do I close the public hearing and
Yep,
then we vote?
and then vote, yep.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. And I'll also make a motion that we accept the 2 different sets a month.
Second that too.
You guys are on a roll tonight.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Right through it.
Yeah, 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes. We made 100.
Almost 120. That's a good $1 per hour, right?
All right.
Should I put that on my resume?
Sure. Up next, since Peter's not here,
Yep.
we can jump right into the handbook updates, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Do you have any questions about it? I mean, these folks sitting here spend an awful lot of time working on that. We met about once a month for 6 months, going through it, reading through the entire employee manual, page by page, going through it section by section, at some points line by line, over and over again in a couple cases. They did a great job, really did. It was a good group to work with. You know, there was, I think a lot of people came in with, you know, ideas that were specific to the department, but then everyone left really seeing, you know, the organization as a whole and how this affects everybody. So I think that we were able to make some changes, particularly in terms of holiday hours, that were hugely beneficial for morale to a lot of departments. I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with the work that everyone did. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I appreciate those particular changes. It's good to make sure people know they're appreciated and
Absolutely.
being compensated fairly. Any questions?
Kudos to you all for your work. I'm sure you're glad it's over.
When was the last time there was this much of a kind of
A rewrite was in 2019.
Oh, yeah.
All sorts of stuff has happened since then.
A couple of things.
Any comments?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're satisfied with the results?
Yeah, we're very happy, and every single department was represented. Most of the department's representation was tried to be here this evening. So this is Dan Heffernan from the ambulance department, Tanya Rose, Amanda Davey, Mary Hubbard from the library, Julia Chidester from the recreation department. I had asked Tanya and Amanda to attend all these meetings and participate because even though they didn't get a vote in the product, they are the ones that are the front line at analyzing and determining how much to pay people based off of the benefits in this personnel manual. So their participation was deeply appreciated by me. I think it was the other groups that participated. Police was Chris Martin, planning was Danica, and Fosh came and represented IT.
And Gretchen from.
Oh, thank you. And DPW was done by Gretchen. So it was truly a group effort that led to this.
Is it published?
Not yet.
Not yet, no.
We've
Won't
got to
be.
give it our blessing, I think.
Exactly, and then it'll go into effect January 1st.
You gonna sign up, Al?
You get on the list for the next review. Be first. So you guys are ready to accept it, or?
So I'm gonna make a motion that we accept the revised manual.
With the,
Yeah, with the corrections that you sent over, and I, again, greatly appreciate that. We, you know, Lily and I were talking about it earlier, you just get so blind after a while, you can't even see that stuff.
That's what editors are for.
I'll second Bill's motion.
great. Anything else to add? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, great. Again, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
All at work. Received a letter from Corcoran, an assessing update. Ally's going to present.
Yes, I have a few updates for you in the assessing arena. So also in the packet was the DRA's monitoring inspection report on the 2022 cyclical inspections. So every year, the Corcoran data collectors visit a chunk of properties in town to ensure that the actual details of those properties match up with what we have in our database. The Department of Revenue Administration then reviews Corcoran's work and the accuracy of our data by visiting some of those same properties. And according to their report, there were no errors found in our data across all the properties that the DRA reviewed, which is exceptional.
I saw that, no error, no error, no
Yeah,
error, no
and
error.
if you look at what's in the packet, you can see there's a lot of categories
Yeah.
that they look at
Yeah.
for all these different properties.
Like 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah, and so that was really awesome to see, you know, just straight down the line, there were no errors. So that was great, and that should be reassuring to taxpayers, I think, because, you know, accuracy is so key
Who do we
to.
congratulate for that?
Ally.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Her
wish.
department.
But it is the Corcoran data collectors who do most of the work on the ground, who are going out, who are looking at these properties. I help with some of the data entry on the back end, but I was very impressed with that, and made me feel good about the work that they're doing. So that was really cool. So next, software, we're moving right along with Vision, which was our choice of vendor for the new assessing software. And Fosh and his team and Mary Beth Walker have been amazing in that process, as has the Vision implementation team. So we're scheduled to have our working version internally by the spring, with the goal of having everything ironed out well ahead of the fall tax billing next year, which leads me to that ratio report and the need for revaluation.
I saw that.
Yes, so our last, as I'm sure you will remember, our last townwide revaluation was in 2021. And the vibe I got from the calls that I was getting in assessing is that there were a lot of people who were surprised by that revaluation, or by the results of that revaluation. So I want to start getting the word out to taxpayers so they feel more prepared and they understand why this revaluation is called for and what the impacts could be. So in the packet is what Mary Beth recently submitted to the DRA. So the DRA can finalize our 2023 median ratio. So the ratio is a measurement of how our assessed values compare to the actual market values of property in town. And it's calculated by looking at arm's length real estate transactions, so valid sales. Mary Beth looked at 108 different sales in town to come up with her number. The emerging ratio that she came up with is 75.4%. And the ratio range the DRA deems acceptable is between 90 and 110%. So
We're back in the same situation we were 2 years ago.
Exactly, yeah, so we're almost 15 points below the low end of that acceptable range.
How do we stop this?
How do we stop it?
Yeah.
Build a wall,
We
man.
shut down the real estate market. We just shut it down.
That's Bill's job.
Nope, nobody buys,
Yeah.
nobody sells.
This year, it did all
There
good.
is some good news though from that report, and that's that our CRD and our PRD, which measure equity, like among the community and how the assessments are from property to property, we looked good there. So it means that, you know, across all the different categories of property, our taxpayers are equitably assessed when compared to each other. So that's good, because the DRA would be more concerned if our numbers there did not look good. So that was a positive thing that I got out of her report.
That simplify that just means basically that there's not gonna be such a vast difference between property values from one neighbor to the next, because that all kind of got ironed out in 2021.
So what that means is that there are no concerns about how, let's say, a commercial industrial property is assessed versus a 3-bedroom residential home. When we look at those numbers, there's nothing that speaks to that residential home being assessed at a, unfairly compared to that industrial property. So it means that things are equally undervalued.
Or to use the term, everybody should be paying their fair share at
Yes.
this point.
Yes.
And if the assessments go up, likely the tax rate will come down to meet that number. And there's not gonna be like the huge sways like there were that freaked everybody out the last time.
So yes, that usually when we see a steep increase in assessed values townwide, the tax rate comes down because the budget is the number we're looking at each year for what needs to be raised for taxation. And we do have many new houses, several developments that are underway. So in addition to the market value of existing properties increasing, we're also going to have a lot of new properties come online. So they will be sharing in the tax burden. So I'm very interested to see the impact that those new properties that are being built and developed has going forward.
When are these new values, the assessments go into effect?
So the April 1st is the start of the tax year. So
December's
the,
tax bill.
so the new values for the 2024 revaluation, that will be seen, the new values will be seen by taxpayers on the fall tax bill next year. So we're like a year out. So the work to establish those values is starting now. Because we've sent out the fall bills, so that'll happen through the spring, through the summer. And then it's nice that we're getting this new assessing software, because then we can upload all of this new updated information into our new software so that it is as accurate as possible for that fall billing.
So we set the tax rate recently.
Yep.
Will that tax rate be assessed as of the fall?
So the
So
tax
in other
rate,
words,
With the new
As the
assessments.
new assessments?
Yeah.
So we can expect increased revenue?
so the tax rate will be reset with the new assessments in the fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not the current, you have to do that annually.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
So it'll be a
So,
whole new set of calculations.
right.
so the expectation is that the total townwide valuation
Right.
is going to increase
Right.
significantly for the purposes of calculating the tax rate.
Right, okay.
So,
So we'll have the ability to absorb that reassessment in our tax rate next year.
Well, so the new
shouldn't have to absorb
assessment,
anything.
we won't be absorbing. The new assessment will be the basis for setting the tax rate. So we'll have the assessments, and then we'll, use that as the divisor for our budgets, whatever we need to raise and appropriate, and that'll give us the new tax
Right.
rate.
But presumably, if the assessments go way up, our tax rates will go down.
We'll go down, that's usually how it works, yeah.
is there anything else I wanted to, so one thing I wanted to mention is that in the last reval, it was the residential properties, especially condos, that saw the greatest increase. I suspect that will remain the same, especially condos. The Trails Edge condos especially have been selling like hotcakes, and there's been many of those just in like the last couple months that have sold in the range of like $400,000.
Trails and?
The Trails Edge, so
Southfield.
Southfield, kind of
Oh,
the
okay,
extension
yeah,
of
right.
Southfield, but
Yeah.
Trails Edge is its own thing. So we have condos being sold for $400,000. There's been at least one that I know of that went for $500,000. So this is what condos are going for in Peterborough. It's a really common question. I got this a lot after the last reval. People would say, well, whose fault is it? Where do these numbers come from? And market activity doesn't necessarily mean a lot to people who don't follow the real estate market. Peterborough is a desirable place to live. There are people that are willing to pay a lot of money to own property in Peterborough. And of course, the sellers of property in Peterborough want to sell to the people who want to give them the most money. Like,
Go figure.
that's, yeah. So, you know, for folks that don't stay up to date on the real estate market, I can imagine it would be a real shock. I will say that I have a binder out on the counter right outside the town clerk's office where I keep track of all the sales that have been happening throughout the year. So binders for most previous years, the last 5 years are out there. So I invite people, if you're in the townhouse, look through that binder, look at the sales amount for the property record cards in that binder. And, you know, you shouldn't be surprised at the increases in value that you see with the next revaluation, because it's all based on the sales data. And that sales data speaks to Peterborough being a desirable place to
You
live.
guys gotta stop being so good. That's the problem, is that we have such a great staff, a great town.
Yeah, why don't we,
Mess it
why
up
don't
a
we
little
not,
bit, will ya?
why don't we not encourage that?
But that said, I want to emphasize, because this is something that came up again a lot in 2021, is that the process for revaluations is set by the state of New Hampshire. This is statewide. Every municipality in New Hampshire has to have a townwide revaluation, a minimum of once every 5 years. So even though the last one was in 2021, we're going to be doing it again in 2024. It's at minimum once every 5 years. Also, looking at the market data, that's also the way that it's done across the state. So, you know, our residents shouldn't feel that this is, you know, a mechanism put in place by the town to punish them for living here. This is how it's done across the state. There's a lot that goes into it. It can be very complicated, very confusing. Anyone is invited to come to my office, to email me, to call me if you have questions about this, because it's a lot to absorb, and knowledge is power. So if there's any property owners that want to get a bigger understanding about the way this is done, by all means, I'm happy to sit down and discuss it with you.
Al?
Yes, is there an assessment for land in current use?
Is that there is land that's in current use is assessed, but it is assessed at a much lower rate than land not in current use. So current use land it's not free. In some instances, it's a very small assessment though. Like if there's a swath of wetlands, that is there, you know, it's useful to all of the flora and fauna that live there, but not necessarily to the landowner. That landowner isn't going to pay a lot for those wetlands.
But it is done. There is a process.
It is,
They're
yes.
included in the process.
Absolutely.
So-
Yep, absolutely. Are there any other questions?
Good work, Ally.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks
That's
for
my update.
Bringing us up to date. All right.
With all the excitement, we've had all sorts of,
Well, Peter's here now,
okay.
so we'll wait on that.
We won't forget about the trip centers.
I know. Welcome, Peter. Great to see you.
You too?
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
very much.
In an ongoing series, we've invited our representatives to the state House and the State Senate. Donovan was here a couple weeks ago. And Jonah kicked off the series. So we've asked Peter Leishman, our representative to the House, to give us an update on what was accomplished last year, what might be accomplished this year. Thanks.
All right. Well, there's a lot going on. So for those that don't know me, I've been in the legislature a few years. I serve on the Finance Committee. I happen to be the chair of Division 1. There are 3 divisions on finance, and each one of us have a specific task within the budget. I also serve on the Joint Legislative Fiscal Committee, which consists of 5 senators and 5 House members. We oversee everything that comes in from the federal government as far as federal grants. And if a department runs short of funding, we also have the authority to give them additional funding if it's available. I also serve on just one other group. It's a kind of like an ethics board. It's called the Speakers Advisory Group. There's 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, and if there's a complaint about a member of the House, we review it and make a recommendation to the Speaker on what sort of disciplinary action should be taken against that member. So what I've given you there that you're looking at is just a snapshot since 19 of the money received by Peterborough, by the state, or from the state. You'll see that there are a number of items that have increased and some that have gone down. There is one I'd like to point out to you as far as the contribution the state is making towards retirement. It was a 7.5% contribution to municipalities. This year, that's about 10 down in 2023. It's like $26,000. That's just a one-time payment. That's not going to be a continuing payment, but the state revenues have been such that there was a feeling that we should give something back to the communities and as far as retirement contributions. And in that vein, I actually have a bill I'm the prime sponsor of concerning retirement. Some of you may recall that back in 2011, cuts were made to those people in Group 2, that's police and fire. Their benefits were cut. If they didn't have at least 10 years of vesting, they took quite a hit. So I served on a retirement commission this past summer. We've come up with a recommendation to make those people whole. And there's actually one person in Peterborough that's a Group 1 or a teacher that would be affected by this legislation. And there are 12 members of your police fire force that would be affected by this legislation. So they would get some payback, they'd get better vesting, they'd be brought back to where they should have been and not penalized as they were back in 2011. So, and again, there's no funding mechanism yet for that. There's hope that the state will pay the entire cost, but we're still looking for a fiscal note to see what the impact would be on the state or the municipalities or the members, because as you know, the town and the members actually pay into the state retirement system almost entirely, 100%, except for that small contribution you got this year of $26,000. There's another piece of legislation that I've introduced this year, and that's dealing with bed and breakfast. This item was brought to my attention by the folks up at Cranberry Meadow Farm. I'm looking for the document because I'd like to just read what it says, and I think you'll all be kind of shocked. So I was contacted by them that the state was after them because they were serving snacks. So there's actually a law in the books that prevents any establishment like that from serving snacks outside of the breakfast time period. So
Heaven forfend.
yeah. So I'm the prime sponsor of legislation that changed that around, and there's a permit conditions that says breakfast only, overnight guests only, no prep of snacks, lunch, dinner, or catered events allowed. So if you're coming into that establishment late in the day or at night, they can't even give you a cookie, so we're hoping to change that. So,
But their establishment falls somewhere in between a restaurant and a bed and breakfast,
yeah.
because she wants to do dinners and you know, so on and so forth. And she was complaining about that a couple of years ago to us, and said, seek.
Is that zone for that up there?
No, it's not a zone, it's the state law.
It's state law.
If you call yourself, sorry,
Go ahead, Al.
if you call yourself a bed and breakfast, is there a difference between that and a hotel?
Yes,
Is there-
Yeah.
What is that difference?
you can serve food in a hotel and you can't in a bed and breakfast except for breakfast.
Could they change their designation, their name?
Well, what they're looking for in this particular case, and other people have reached out to me since the legislation was filed, if you're, say, visiting the Cranberry Meadow Farm, that if you went there, you could have a snack, but someone coming in off the street that's not staying there can't. So it's just the people that are staying there overnight or for a week or whatever the case may be. But right now, there's a prohibition that you can't give out any sort of food after breakfast. So if they want even a drink of orange juice, you can't technically give them that. So hopefully this legislation will address that. It's got a lot of support. Even the Senate President has signed on because of the interest in seeing the hospitality industry taken care of in the state. So some of the legislation that was filed last year, I actually was on a bill to permit having, I'm lost for words here, background checks for purchasing of weapons. That bill failed by 20 votes. So that is again being introduced by some other folks this year, but that's some of the legislation. Some of the other good legislation, the Granite State Advantage, I was on that legislation as well. That's actually serving 179 individuals in the state for health insurance. This is a continuation of the New Hampshire Health Protection Plan, which was passed several years ago, and it has been funded. So those people that can't afford health insurance do have that avenue to get health insurance for little or no money based on their income. So some of the things that on that chart I gave you earlier that aren't listed that I just checked on today, the town is going to get over $200,000 in fiscal 24 for wastewater treatment, and your first check will be in February for that. And then in 25, $197,000 in funding, which was in our budget. And speaking of the budget, the state is in pretty good shape. We've got about almost a $300 million rainy day fund, which is quite significant. It's never been that high. However, there are a lot of issues on the horizon, like the Youth Development Center abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse issue. There's $175 million worth of claims there. And right now, there's about 29 have been settled, 29 million have been settled, but again, it's about $175 million in claims, with over 1,000 individuals coming forward alleging abuse, physical or sexual. So that's a real problem for the state right now as far as an unknown quantity as far as the cost.
So Peter, could the money that the, was it the Superior Court or federal, the state court found in favor of Conval, the equitable payment for a student in the state of New Hampshire, not just Conval, right? That was across the state, right? 18. Could that money come from that 300 million-ish?
Well, it could, but just in the last couple of days, the governor, through the Department of Justice, has filed for a stay.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, but
It could if the matter is, they're asking it be stayed and remanded back to Ruoff, the judge.
yeah.
And depending on what he does or doesn't do, it would certainly go on to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. So you won't see anything, I hate to say it happen in this budget year, because the court process, as you know, can take a long period of time. And I haven't seen the actual filing yet, but it has been noted by the Justice Department that they are filing for a stay of that decision.
That difference would be like $500 million anyways, right? If it wasn't appealed and it started tomorrow, it's like $500 million worth of funding difference from where it is right now. Right?
You're absolutely right, and the state doesn't have that money.
Right.
You know, you start looking at this youth development litigation, there could be $200 million right there. We've already set aside $100 million, but that's not going to be nearly enough. The adequacy grant money has actually gone down that Peterborough is going to get this year because of school population. And those numbers, if you're interested, is $352 million for 24 and $356 million for 25. There's some good news. On the 27th of this month, you'll be getting a check from the state for $611,000 for the rooms and meals distribution. So that's gone up quite a bit.
What's the percentage on that these days?
I can't tell you, Bill, off the top of my head. It used to be like, It was like 12.5,
Yeah.
but I think it's still 12.5, but I'm not
So I
positive.
thought, what's her name,
Thought it was-
Ricciardi? I thought she was working on that, got it back up to 20-something.
I know it's not that high.
Well, she got the payback up,
But
not the actual tax
Percentage.
percentage. She got how much is returned to the individual
Right,
town,
right.
or was one of them, at any rate.
So one of the other things that state has done that I think benefits us all, especially those people that work for the state that live in Peterborough, there was a 12% pay raise given to all state employees, both part-time, seasonal, and full-time. It's about 11,000 people with that affected. And that cost the state $288 million. Employees of the state haven't had a pay raise in some time, and it was felt because of the number of vacancies in state government that we had to do something. So it was 10% in '23 and 2% in '24. So, looking quickly at my notes that I brought, if there's anything else that comes to mind. I don't know if I mentioned the state's overall budget went up to $15 billion this year. And that's a lot of money. A lot of that, most of it is federal money, believe it or not. A lot of our services are paid for by federal money. There's no way the state has that type of money available to itself. So, but the total budget went up almost $500 million over last budget.
That's a 2-year budget, right?
It's a 2-year budget starting on July 1st. So we're kind of 6 months into it.
Good help.
Is there a way to compare that to other states, that is either per capita or per size, and compare that government?
Yeah,
subsidy, if you wanna call it?
there's a group, the name's escaping me at the moment, but they come out and compare each state, the tax rates of each state, where they rank property tax-wise, spending-wise, and it's done for all 50 states. It's kind of a think tank down in DC.
Right.
From
So
a federal standpoint, New Hampshire's still a donor state. We send more money to DC than
Then we get back. It's getting close, though.
Is it?
It's getting close,
Good.
but we're still a donor state. Are there any other questions? Yes.
A couple of, if you don't mind. With regards to the retirement, I know I know that Police and Fire have been campaigning for a little while now to get that
decade.
correction made. Has anything been coming for the teachers or the employees to do the same thing on the other side?
Well, the thing with it is, with teachers, they do get Social Security.
Yep.
And that benefit all. Group 2, police and fire do not. So they're relying totally on the state for their benefits. And that's the reason we focused on the Group 2, because they haven't had any increases for years. And towns, municipalities generally are having a great deal of trouble attracting people, EMS and firemen. It was always attractive to have the state benefit because it was pretty lucrative. It hasn't been, especially since it was cut back in 2011.
Well, EMS, they fall under Group 2.
Yep.
With the rest of the regular employees, so paramedics, I'm sorry, Group 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say-
Regular, Group
yeah.
1,
Group 1 is teachers.
I'm thinking back and forth.
Yeah.
So yes, so they would not be seeing a change unless they were also certified firefighters working full-time as a firefighter.
There is, in Peterborough's case, one teacher that will actually see a benefit, because we're looking at how it was changed in 2011, and there is one teacher that actually would be affected. I don't know the specifics, but the retirement board gave me that figure the other day. There's one teacher in Peterborough that would be
Is that
affected.
the school resource officer?
That's a police officer.
It could be.
Yeah.
I don't know that they were vested before the change was made. I don't think so, or close to being vested. My other concern with that too, of course, is budget-wise. If the towns have to make any kind of, contribution, even if it's just a percentage of that, that's huge. That has a huge impact on us, already the retirement cost for police and our firefighters is very, very high. So, I would urge you to use state funds to make that catch up, or, split it.
There was a
Possible.
bill, House Bill 436, which passed the House overwhelmingly, which is going to provide $50 million a year towards that Group 2 group.
Yeah.
No municipal funds whatsoever. The Municipal Association was chasing us around hard to make sure the state paid for that, but as you know, over the years,
They got
about
well.
15 years ago, it was like 35% the state paid, then it went to 30, then it went to 0.
Yes.
So there is a fear among the municipal association that even if the state paid this one time, that the next legislature could say, we're not going to pay anything, and that's the risk. But we're kind of looking at those people that were harmed by that decision in 2011, that no fault of their own, they weren't, vested for 10 years, but they lost that benefit they signed up for, which is kind of like a fairness issue, but.
No, absolutely understand. I mean, certainly employees suffer the same way, I mean, even I personally, I had been working here full-time since 2008, was not vested in 2011, so when those changes went through, I also couldn't, contribute enough to make that full, to get in under the January 1, 2012 deadline. So I understand, I certainly understand where they're coming from, but, at the same time, right now, I'm right in the middle of finalizing my proposed budget, so I have budget numbers on my mind, and I'm very concerned about it. It's one of the things that we struggle with, particularly as we look at how best to manage the fire department and its needs, because the cost of creating full-time firefighter positions is just so onerous because of, not just the health insurance and all that stuff, but the retirement cost that goes along with creating full-time positions. So just something to keep in mind.
Hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I figured you did. My second question, and this is one that Ally may want to weigh in on because she's got more direct experience. We of course, between Ally and myself, Ally does most of the day-to-day administration of welfare, and I help with, some of the more complicated stuff since I have quite a bit of experience in it. We have a client that we were assisting for many, many months with rent while they were waiting to be approved for the aid to permanent and temporarily disabled persons. That, for whatever reason, got dragged out for an incredibly long time for this person, even though they had all their paperwork in order, they clearly qualified. Once that finally got approved, which just this month, I believe, that person found out that they were going to receive, I believe it was $1,400 a month in assistance.
All said it was about $2,000, and then they found out that they'd be required, because they were receiving the APTD, their Medicaid bracket changed. So they were previously receiving Granted Advantage.
Yep.
And then it changed, and now they're required to make a $1,000 pay down for their medical expenses
Every month.
every month. So they have to, before the Medicaid will kick in, they have to accrue $1,000 in medical debt.
Something doesn't sound right.
Well, and I found this out from our community resource specialist at the River Center, Mandy Carter, who she makes calls. She gets to the bottom of stuff when we hear something that doesn't sound quite right. She goes up the chain as far as she can go to figure out what's going on, and she's received several phone calls now with a supervisor from the state who's like, yeah, there's nothing we can do. When you receive that benefit, you get switched to that bracket, and yeah, they're required to rack up that debt before their benefits will kick in. There's really nothing we can do.
Unfortunately, this person has extreme medical needs, and so they are spending hundreds of dollars every month, which medical bills.
Yeah, they will easily hit that. It's $955 is the precise amount, but they will easily hit that every month. And so, now they thought that they were going to receive these benefits that they've waited so long for, and it comes with a loss of that medical help that they were receiving. And so I feel like they're carrying that weight again of, are they going to pay their rent, or are they going to pay this medical debt. And that's been really frustrating because this has been going on for months and months and months.
Is this like an ongoing medical debt that they have every month?
Yes.
So-
It's a regular treatment they have to receive.
Yeah, very, very intensive, like it's, yeah. And,
Infusions,
yes.
right?
I'll reach out to someone I know at the Department of Health Human Services and see if I can find out what's going on there. The state, I know right now, is dealing with so many issues with homelessness and people that aren't, that they're losing benefits, federal benefits that are expiring, and they're trying to come to the state for help, but I'll see what I can find out about this. If that doesn't seem how Granite State Advantage is supposed to work.
yeah,
Right.
we were
thought so
pretty
too.
shocked.
We were shocked to
We
find
were
this out.
shocked.
I mean, there's so few people that we interact with who are receiving APTD. It's just, it's such a difficult benefit to qualify for in the first place.
Mhm.
So we don't have a whole lot of experience working with people who get it and have this kind of intensive medical need. So this was the first time I've ever seen anything like this, and we were really very surprised. Any help?
Can I get a
you-
good phone number to call you, or?
Yeah.
Oh,
Some-
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, I'll give you my card.
Okay. Is that all, Nicole?
That was it,
Nothing
that's all
else?
I have.
Nothing?
That's it.
We could spend most of the evening talking.
Oh, yeah, there's always more.
At the risk
We
of
could.
continuing
Yeah,
this,
but we
I hope this is a quick question. Is the state considering other sources of revenue that they have not used in the past? And I'm not going to say the dirty word, sales tax, but there may be other sources that I can't contemplate.
Well, funny you should bring that up, because the legislature and Senate agree and the governor signed a bill that expedite the repeal of the interest and dividends tax.
Right.
So in 2025, there will be no interest and dividends tax. So in 2024, we're going to lose about $17 million. It was scheduled to phase out anyway, but it's been accelerated. So that revenue source will be lost in '25 entirely. There's no talk, serious talk about a sales or income tax, as long as as you know, the Senate is controlled by Republicans by a fairly substantial margin, and the governor is Republican, and they've sworn never to have an income tax or a sales tax. There is talks among my ranks and the Democratic side to have an income tax. It's been floated before, but it never gets very far.
I won't make a speech about it, but we have needs, the state and this town has needs, and the fire and ambulance services are one of them. They just cannot meet their obligations in a way, and they need new facilities, as you know, and we're building a new facility, and that's gonna cost everybody a lot. So it's gonna put a strain whether we're a town that has high taxes or not, it doesn't matter. But I think this particular condition exists all over the state from what I've been able to determine. What is their answer to that? How do we just raise more taxes? Is
No,
that their answer?
You'll find if I
don't want to think about this.
No, I don't mind at all. You'll find in that, for instance, that report I mentioned earlier, it's done on every state. New Hampshire's got some of the highest property tax rates in the country. That's not a surprise to any of us here, but there's just a feeling among my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that our present tax system is working fine. And to Bill's question about, or comment about the adequacy, we need about $500 million or more dollars to fund adequacy for education, just base adequacy.
Just to solve that one problem.
And the only way to raise that type of money is probably, honestly, with an income tax. And that, again, to be very candid and honest, as long as the other party with an R is in Concord, that's not going to change.
So they think it's okay
Yep.
to have underfunded education and maybe struggling fire and ambulance
Well,
services?
I don't want to speak to them,
I
all
know,
the way, but
sorry.
they like it to be locally controlled. That's the issue, that any spending for education and those sorts of things should be done locally versus the state paying the tab. So,
Fair enough. Okay.
No, there's more push, you think, or more talk about an income tax than a sales tax?
it's really, every year it comes up, but it never goes anywhere because people, being realistic, saying the governor's always said he'll veto a sales or income tax. Democratic governors have said the same thing. The House right now, I think there's a 3-member split between Democrats and Republicans, so you don't have the votes to override the governor's veto. And the Senate has got 14 members and 10 Democrats. So, and they've all taken the pledge not to have an income tax or a sales tax. So until that
Seems like
changes.
sales tax would affect everybody more equally, including people from out of state, which is a major source of our revenue.
Well, you may recall back when Jean Shaheen was governor, she floated the idea of a sales tax, and I actually voted for that, and it never got through
I
to
can
the
still see the
Senate.
mushroom cloud.
Yeah.
Happen.
Yeah, and she got a lot of pushback because she had taken the pledge, but she said, we need another source of revenue, and like you said, you got all the tourists coming here from states that have sales taxes, the skiers, but it never got into the Senate, so.
On that same vein, there's a restaurant that my husband and I go to a lot. He has a house in Nashua, and so when I'm out there, we go to a little restaurant just over the border in Kingsborough. And right across from that restaurant is a marijuana dispensary. And so when we're sitting there, sometimes I'll look out the window, you know, on a Friday or Saturday afternoon and start counting the Hampshire license plates pulling into that marijuana dispensary, and thinking to myself, my gosh, how much of New Hampshire income is going to pay that Massachusetts tax on that marijuana? You know, and
It is
when are we?
significant.
It is significant. And when are we finally going to get marijuana legalized in New Hampshire so we can start taxing that?
Well, we're kind of a funny state because, you know, the motto, live free or die.
Yeah?
But in some issues, and there was a commission, a cannabis commission, that just met this past summer, and they voted not to support legalization. There was some push to let the liquor commission do it, which I would be opposed to that particular avenue. I think if it's done, it should be done by regular retail merchants, like they do in most states, but giving it to the liquor commission wasn't a selling point for a lot of people. But there is, again, whatever the reason, the legislature, especially the Senate this time, said they weren't interested in any cannabis legislation passing.
That's absolutely mind-blowing to me.
It's surprising, it really is, because we have, you know, we've always encouraged the Massachusetts, person to stop at our liquor store right over the border. It seems surprising that we're just letting our New Hampshire marijuana shoppers go across the border down to Massachusetts.
The tax revenue that Mass gets on each purchase is like 25% or something.
It's huge.
There's all kinds of different line items,
Yeah.
but to not legalize it is mind-blowing. to
In
me.
my understanding, it's not just Nashua. I mean, there is a
Oh.
whole border, and
No.
then you go on the other side, Western Massachusetts, the same thing occurs.
Absolutely, absolutely, I'm sure it is. I mean,
That highway is-
I'm just sitting sitting in that front of that one window and watching the traffic, and just, it surprises me, because live free or die state,
Well, do
why-
those businesses that are on the malls, that are all in Salem and Nashua, they must have a big say, because a lot of their businesses derive from having no sales tax.
Yeah.
Right?
When I lived in Massachusetts, we'd go up there, because it wasn't far away, we'd go up there to shop.
And we have no sales tax, one of the lowest
So-
gas taxes in the country.
What
for
about a
gasoline.
little sales tax, a baby sales tax, just a little starter sale? And I know that's,
We're not gonna solve it tonight, probably.
sorry.
Probably not.
So Peter, give us a vision of what's gonna happen next year legislatively. You start up in January again?
Yeah, our first session is January 3rd. We have 2 session days with a couple hundred bills to dispense with.
Right.
Usually the second year is not that exciting, but there will be more legislation dealing with marijuana that is in the pipeline. I think there's some legislation for an income tax that's usually there. My focus is always, because I'm on finance, is the budget, and our job is done, but the number of bills, I think, is still about 800. They're just starting to trickle out. If you go online to the New Hampshire state site, you'll find that what bills are out there. Some haven't posted yet, but nothing terribly, has caught my attention. Like, we've had issues in the past, like the 10 tax and other things, but I haven't seen those yet. It's still early, but most of the bills will be out in the next couple of weeks.
The bold headlines, are they going to reintroduce the bill to some accountability to these freedom accounts, these education accounts?
Well, that's another sore subject. As you probably have read, there was a legislator, a Republican, that had been voting not living in the district that he was living in. And the Freedom Account vote passed by one vote.
That's right.
And if he hadn't been there, it would have failed, because, just speaking for myself again, the Freedom Accounts take an awful lot of money away from real public education. And there's not really any oversight at all.
That's right.
And there's thousands of people now that are taking advantage of that payment. Again, I'd say it anywhere, it's just not right. But it is what it is. It passed the legislature by a vote and the Senate. So for the next 2 years, that will be in play.
Oh, so it wouldn't be reintroduced this year?
I doubt it. Once something like that, it's a budget item, it's like the wastewater treatment, all that stuff, it goes into the budget, becomes a budget item. And, but yeah, that was very disappointing, because it was so close and again passed by one vote. But again, I say this in all sincerity, a lot of the activity in Concord is based on lobbyists, like the marijuana issue. New Futures, for instance, is big on public health and safety. There's very strong lobby, and they lobbied very hard against the marijuana bill. The folks on Freedom Accounts, they show up. They pack committee rooms. It's very important, you show up or get a hold of your legislator to let them know, because a lot of the decisions made up there are based on, like if Nicole calls me on something, it's in my head, and it's very important. One thing the Republican speaker has done, would give him a lot of credit, that we have everything is online now. You can watch a hearing, you can participate, you can download a letter to the committee members. It's all up there when the hearings are going on, or show up. But people need to show up, because if people don't show up, well, they don't really care. And then they find out about the results, and then they care when it's too late.
Yeah. Huh. That's everywhere then.
As you can see up on the display there, we've accepted $125,000 roughly from the state. Do you know where that $10 million came from that generated these one-time?
Again, as I mentioned earlier, the state has done very well. Business tax was way up.
Right.
Business enterprise tax are way up. And the state has got, like I said, almost a $300 million rainy day fund, which we've never had that type of money. So the state is kind of flush, but you start taking other things into consideration. But there's always been a feeling among my colleagues on finance, if we have a little extra money, it's like one-time payments, like the retirement, this 7.5%, give something more back, because everybody up there represents a community, not just state legislators. You're representing your community. So we try to find one-time monies. But the state is in a very good financial position for whatever reason.
So that's state
money.
It's state money, it's not federal.
It wasn't fed.
No.
I couldn't remember where it came from when I was asked earlier, so.
It wasn't stated in the letters.
No, it wasn't.
But we have received a lot more federal money in the last couple of years. I think last year, $2 billion that the fiscal committee took in of federal money for COVID and other related things. So that is of some concern, again, to be candid, that's going to dry up. So next year it may not be as lucrative as far as state revenues, especially losing the interest and dividends portion as well.
Well,
All right, Peter, well, thank you for joining us.
Well, good to see you, and don't hesitate. I know Nicole never hesitates to call and give me trouble, so.
Yeah.
And I would like to say Joan has been a great asset.
well, he was.
He says the same about you.
Oh, that's good to hear. No, he works hard. He takes it very seriously. He's on a good committee, criminal justice.
Right.
And we often ride up together. He gives me all sorts of advice with how the young people think. And he's a good kid.
That's great.
Thanks so much, Peter.
All right, good to see you.
Good to see you.
And with that, Peter did mention money for wastewater treatment facilities and that sort of thing. And of course, at last meeting, we were told that our wastewater treatment facility received an award for most,
It was
remind me, the most.
energy efficient.
Energy efficiency.
Efficiency.
Well, today we found out that our own Nate Brown, who runs our wastewater treatment facility, has been awarded, it will be the recipient of the 2023 Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant Operator of the Year from the Environmental Protection Agency.
Wow.
So I wanted to That was the big news that I think was
I think it's
exciting for
great.
me.
That is awesome.
Another stellar employee and, yeah.
And it's great to see him getting recognized, you know,
Yeah.
not only by the EPA, but also his peers, you
Yeah.
know, for the great work that he's done.
Yeah. So that
Really
was-
proud of him,
that
you
was
know.
great news, yeah.
He is stellar, his crew is stellar. That wastewater treatment plant is, it's cleaner than my office, to be quite
Mm.
honest, which is quite amazing considering the work that they do. You know, they run a very tight ship over there.
Well, that's why everybody wants to move to Peterborough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Well-
no, clean water is not something to mess with. You know,
No,
it's gonna be
no.
available.
Yeah, absolutely, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and then there's also a little more money. too.
Yeah, we have a little bit more money also from the state. We have received a grant from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, Division of Forest and Lands, of $970 to offset some of the costs of purchasing gear and equipment that we use towards putting out forest fires, brush fires, things like that. So wilderness fires.
Great.
Were you aware that Peterborough and Harrisville had gotten this federal grant from the Department of Energy? It's called an Energy Efficiency Municipal Grant.
Yeah, it's it was the Energy
Community
Efficiency
Block
Community
Grant.
Development Block Grant program.
Honestly, I was not.
Yeah.
70,000 from the feds. I thought that was pretty cool.
And you're getting your flood control money again.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes,
Always
sir.
appreciated, yep.
Good.
So just to accept that grant, we do have a motion. You'll have to make a motion that Nicole McStay, Town Administrator, is duly authorized by the Select Board to enter into contracts and agreements on behalf of the Town of Peterborough with the State of New Hampshire, acting by and through the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and is further authorized to execute any documents on behalf of this municipality which may be, in her judgment, desirable or necessary to effect the purpose of this resolution.
So moved.
What she said.
Second.
Perfect.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
nice work.
And actually, Brad Winters gets all the credit for this one.
Thanks.
But $970, I'll have to
Yep.
tell him.
Excellent.
Could you kindly send me the wording for
Yeah.
that motion?
No
All right.
I was not able
Motion
to capture
adjourned.
all of that.
Go figure.
Second.
Yeah.
Aye.
See ya.
Great, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Oh, no
Good to see
problem.
you.
Good to see you.
Finance interest, you can have it, this is just the finance budget does the proportionate federal, state, all that, kind of an interesting process.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
We're going to be
See you later.
starting to take on these numbers.